So we're going to talk about how to reduce stress when stressful things are happening and how to do that sustainably, which means processing the trauma that's being triggered. So right now, underneath this stress right here, I have the stress of the coronavirus and the financial markets, and so do you probably. And then underneath that, the biggest part of all of this, the most important thing I've learned is how to embody our true nature and just get a giggle if you can about the silly human self and its conditioning and what's happening. And that's what I'm doing right now is giggling about this Facebook Live thing. So I couldn't find the button to turn on. It was like, come on, people, where's the button? And I'm pretty savvy technically. So my bio, not in terms of technology, but in terms of stress, I have researched and practiced for 35 years. I'm 60. Okay, that's a long time. I started when I was 26, and I have been teaching and coaching for the last 20 years. So I'm an expert in stress because I'm an expert at stress. Oh, that's me. So that's why I've had to put my whole life's energy into it. And now I get to pass that along to everybody I know or anyone who's listening. And that's my passion. And especially now. So, oh my God, going from giggling to thinking about what's happening in the world is just tragic. And it's okay to laugh and have comic relief too. Nothing wrong with that. But I want to be sensitive to you and sensitive to what's going on. I mean, we have the full spectrum from a little bit of stress about technology to people dying, our loved ones. It's even traumatizing just watching Italy, and their rows and rows of coffins. Like that's actually traumatizing to us with a little t. When we watch the news, if we watch too much, the experts are telling us, like Thomas Hubel, who just did an international stress summit with 50,000 people signed up for this call. And he had experts from all over the world on trauma. And I learned there's a little t trauma and there's big T trauma. Actually, I learned that a while ago because I never thought I had any trauma. But actually, what's mostly happening right now when people are getting stressed, and I'll go into some examples, it's our underlying traumas that are being triggered because most of us, the vast majority of us, are actually okay. Right now, right here, you wouldn't be watching this if you weren't actually essentially okay. So that's a really important thing to remember, that when we're in the present, we're okay. Eckhart Tolle, all these teachers teach this even when you're in extremely difficult circumstances. And we learned it also from people in the concentration camps, for example. Or Byron Katie and Eckhart Tolle themselves were suicidally depressed before this massive wake-up call that they didn't even have to answer. It just happened all by itself when they woke up to reality. And Eckhart said he just started hearing birds chirping. Like he'd never heard the birds chirping. He was too depressed. So we're going to talk about a few of these things. Now, the essential shift, and let me remind you and myself that the WHO, World Health Organization, they said long before the coronavirus, they said stress is the epidemic of the 21st century. Well, what does that mean it is now? Like it is through the roof. And that means it's a massive wake-up call. And I'm not just saying that as some outlier just with no clue. All of my teachers are saying this. If you listen to Eckhart Tolle, to Byron Katie, to Adyashanti, to Deepak Chopra, to Lynn Twist, I mean, there's Jack Kornfield, John Kabat-Zinn, they're all saying this is an opportunity to awaken. Because pain brings us to our knees. And as a coach, you know, the clients who are on their knees, the executives that I've coached who are on probation, they're my favorite to work with because they're listening. They don't say, I don't have time for the call today. I have to go to my kid's soccer game. No, it's urgent. They are listening to what's going on and how they can get out of the stress and how they can move on. So to that end, what my teachers have taught me is many, 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 many things. And I have 65 tools, or I like to say jewels, in my treasure chest. That's kind of more feminine than the old masculine tools in the toolbox. So there's one, though, that's most important more than anything else. And that is distinguishing between the higher self and the human self. The most important thing I've learned. So I'll go into that a bit. And then my process is like the container or the context to hold everything I've learned and to deal and help for me. Like I practice what I preach, or rather I preach what I practice, actually, is more accurate. So there's a context of, I call it the AAA quest, because we're on a quest. Each time a challenge comes up, we're on a quest to resolve that stress. So what I need to do is raise awareness, like expand awareness to see more of what's going on. If I'm like this, I can't see the whole picture. But when I expand awareness beyond my normal blind spots, I'm like, oh. And if I'm up in the tree, like I like to use the analogy of the wise old owl up in the tree representing the higher self, and the stinking thinking skunk down in the weeds, lost in the weeds, as the human self. So as I pull away and have this perspective from the higher self, or you can call it true nature or higher power or Christ consciousness, whatever you want to call it, it's the wisest, highest part of ourselves. When that part scans back and can observe the lower, it's just less conscious. It's no less important. It's innocent. It's sweet. It's like a little kid. You wouldn't call it bad names because it hasn't learned something yet. It's the kid's only 2. So this is just talking about our evolution. But the most powerful tool that I have for myself and that I pass along is this ability to differentiate which is which. Because right now, we're all making decisions, very, very important decisions about our money, about our well-being, about how much risk we take in terms of exposing ourselves to the virus. Every single one of us in the frickin' entire world are making these decisions right now. And some of us are making them very unconsciously, meaning we haven't raised our awareness about them. And I wander a little bit in case you haven't noticed. So I just realized I didn't finish telling you about the AAA quest. So I will stop and get organized. Awareness, action, and acceptance. And I accept myself for wandering because that's what I do. Okay. So when we expand awareness, we can see more from that higher perspective. Then we don't just leave it there. We take action. Like, what are we doing to protect ourselves and our money and each other? What are we doing? I'm trying to give hand sanitizers to hospitals, but they only take donations. I'm trying to recover some of my costs. So I'm like, what do I do? But we're taking action. We're taking action. And then actually what happens after raising awareness and taking wise action, people already relax over and over and over again. My coaching clients, my audiences, relax. More water. I have a throat thing. I don't have all the symptoms of the virus. I don't have fever. I have plenty of energy, but we'll see. None of us are immune, apparently. So after raising awareness and taking action, typically acceptance just naturally happens. Okay. But if it doesn't, we got to say, I'm saying to myself, what else can I do to let go? Because if I'm not accepting, or if I'm not accepting is hard for some people, if I'm not detaching and letting go, like the Serenity Prayer, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can. And yes, the wisdom, which includes the heart and the brain, the wisdom to know the difference. That's so key. So raising awareness, then having the courage to do what you know is the wisest thing to do. And then after that, I don't know if my mom and dad are going to make it through this thing. And I've been preparing for their death for a while now, for many years actually. So I'm not going to be tremendously suffering if either one of them die or if both of them die. They've lived good lives. And it will be very hard, and I will grieve and cry a lot. Okay, there's an example. Wow, this is going on a ways. Let's see, I was hoping to keep it at 10 minutes, but I'll give you a couple examples. Like I talked to 2 people today already who said these principles are really, really helping them. Like all caps, really helping them. And it's because I'll use the example of conflict. One woman was in conflict with herself, and the guy that I talked with was in conflict with his partner, his wife. I had a conflict yesterday. Why are we having conflicts? Because there's an underlying survival threat. And it's both a real one and a made up future tripping one. Because right now I don't have the virus. Right now nobody I love has died, which doesn't mean it's not a problem. It just means I don't have a reason to be freaking out right now, really. And when I freak out, I'm not being wise and loving, right? You guys probably sense that yourselves. We don't make the best decisions when we're anxious or angry. And not only that, but our immune systems, when we flood it with stress hormones, our immune system is depleted. We need our immune systems right now. More than anything, we need to boost our immune system. So that's why these principles and these tools are so important. So let me just quickly describe what I did yesterday when I had a conflict with someone. She's a lovely woman. We've been working together for a long time, 1.5 years. We had this little conflict about an agreement. We actually started with some nonviolent communication. There's one tool, successfully for a few back and forth. And and then it was like, I can't believe you can't remember this the 4th time. I know, especially after going through the process that I went through, that I was stressed. So we're more irritable. That's normal. That's okay. We're just being human. We don't want to beat ourselves up for that because that increases our stress. You see what I mean? So what I did is I came back to myself and I started writing. Okay. So I've done this so many times. Writing is a tool, stress reduction tool. Writing, venting. I'm not talking about some sweet little thing in a diary that you're editing. I'm talking about flushing it out, venting. I only vented for like a sentence. And then I started remembering my teacher's words, Byron Katie. Is it true that people shouldn't keep their agreements? No. People break agreements. I got to get over it. So that starts me calming down. Ajishanti, accept what is or suffer. That's a Buddhist saying. Yeah, I'm not accepting. I'm resisting. I don't want her to do what she did, and I'm suffering. You can apply this to any situation. This is just an example. So I was differentiating between my mind, the human self, the ego, some people call it, saying, she shouldn't have done that, to the higher perspective, going, it's okay, sweetheart. She did what she did. And you know what? She's stressed too. She's innocently doing her best. This is the higher perspective, pulling out of the, like, covered with gunk from the conflict. It's, figuratively speaking, it feels like it's all over me. But when I can pull back and have some perspective, then I'm coming from the higher self. So then I wrote a love letter to myself. It was only about a paragraph long. But after coming down and having the clarity, the awareness, then it was like, okay, I need to give myself some empathy. Another tool. One tool for empathy is a love letter. So I write to myself as I would to someone that I really love and care about, who's struggling over a conflict. So I'm just saying, I can see how disappointed you are. You were really counting on her. You needed her input for this talk that you're doing. Okay? Then here's where it gets really interesting, and I'll try to wrap up here. Really interesting is connecting the dots to why I'm really stressed, okay? So I'm writing, and it's a discovery. I'm just following the threads. I'm just flushing it out on paper. Very different than just thinking about it, because we're thinking a million thoughts at once. So I'm writing, and I'm like, okay, you're just nervous about your talk, much less the virus. I'm nervous about this talk, and am I going to do a good job? Then I'm tracing that nervousness to financial security. I lost half my income around the virus. Now I have savings and I'm fine right now. But then the other day I read something about the Great Depression and I went, ah, another Great Depression. Whoa, spiking with the stress. Oh, that's what's happening. This is all contributing to my conflict with my friend. Okay? This is what I'm finding out as I write. This is what I'm suggesting you try. Because just trying to push your stress aside is not effective. Then I started saying, oh my gosh, this goes deeper. This is about a screaming child inside who was neglected. I couldn't depend on my parents, actually. They were just so consumed with trying to take care of themselves. I knew they loved me, but I couldn't depend on them. See the thread? Depending on them. So I'm the one who's feeling like I can't trust people. People aren't dependable. That goes back to my experience when I was young. So doing this process, and then I'm saying, oh, I'm yearning for dependability, for predictability, for trust, for care in my agreements with people. Hold on. And it's upsetting to me when I don't get that because it's triggering a wound way back 50 years ago or whenever that was. And then, you know how it ended? The song popped in my head. You can't always get what you want. And then what's the result? Freedom. Oh my gosh. I'm not intense with the conflict. There's a freedom to it. And that is how you reduce your stress, process some trauma that's being triggered, and embody your highest, wisest self by pulling back. And it just kind of all happens naturally.